What is up, down, and sideways, all you absolutely stunning individuals? It is another episode of League Online. My name is Eric Fine, little console on today's episode. You know the drill as we get into Week 8 Global Power Rankings and what will probably be our final top 20 rankings, maybe of the year. After this weekend, everybody should be finalized for the World Championship, which means we'll do the big World's Power Ranking, Player Ranking, and that whole hoopla, but probably, maybe, potentially, don't quote me on this, the final Global Top 20 that we're going to have for the year, which means we got to go out with a bang. We got to have some huge sweeping movements across the board. Well, that wasn't necessarily the case. It kind of more happened last week with the big upsets from KT and Hanwha Pump and T1. The top 5 changed a bunch. The bottom of the table looks eerily similar to what we got last week, and that's we can at least do some season farewells and wrap-ups for a couple of these squads, starting with BNK Fearex at the bottom of that table. And you know, it was a fun run for them. Maybe thought there was going to be a full dark horse run in playoffs. Ends up Dplus getting their revenge in the rematch. But going forward, feel like both Diablo and Clear, if they're not on BNK next year, it's because there are some bigger LCK squads that have called with a little bit of a pay raise for those two. Wouldn't be surprised to see them on higher contending squads in the next year. JDG is not eliminated yet. They are still alive, and you'll see in that 15th spot, Weibo ahead of them. Those two will be clashing head-to-head for the right to vie for that 4th seed for the LPL heading to Worlds, which will then be vying for the right to beat T1 to get to that main stage. But Weibo, shockingly, has been the slightly more consistent team between the two of them. You could argue the ceiling for JDG is higher, but we really haven't seen JDG reach that ceiling yet. So when they do match up head-to-head, the real question is just, is Scout going to be playing at a even halfway to MVP level, or are we getting the Scout that we've gotten for the last split and a half? Because if it's the latter, yeah, Weibo are probably going to come away with a pretty convincing victory. Maybe not convincing, but a victory nonetheless in that matchup. 18 spot, we've had kind of juggling a few different LCP teams. The 2nd seed, it is Secret Wales who will be going as that 2 seed from the LCP. They lost to the Flying Oysters in the finals, but the 3rd seed from that regular season, hey, they showed up. They beat PSG Talon, which was, you know, the main other squad vying. It's not because I'm bored of the LEC. It's because I've just got so much information to get out that the oxygen won't even let it happen. But PSG was on this list before. They looked like they were the favorites with Maple and the boys to maybe steal that 2nd spot, but it is Team Secret Wales who get it done. And we've so evolved for the LCP that we don't even need to talk about taking the Flying Oyster seriously. It's now the dark horse don't sleep on is the 2 seed in Team Secret Wales that we'll get back to. Dplus Kia, another team whose year has come to an end. The first time we will not be talking about Showmaker at the World Championship, which is obviously a little bit disappointing, but they're looking forward, projecting what's next. 100%. This bot lane needs to change, whether it's both Aiming and Barrel. There's been some rumors that Barrel might be retiring. Aiming had some very suspect moments. We've memed about Diablo. Get Diablo over to this squad. Get Pays back over from the LPL. It's depending on how much money Dplus wants to spend, but I think this core nucleus of Siwu, Lucid, and Showmaker is absolutely fine, more than fine. Siwu had some incredible moments over the year, and we've seen the growth of Lucid as well. So that top half of the map, assuming Showmaker wants to run it back again, it's just a bot lane that needs some shoring up, just complete revamping and do-over if you're talking about Dplus Kia. So sad that we're not going to see this iconic brand at the World Championship, but excited for what the future is, and hopefully Showmaker can just stay motivated and want to keep playing this game, because there's a lot of broken champions that come out lately, and we know the copy pasta is coming out of Showmaker. Always a good time. Obviously, all these EU squads, Weibo we already touched on, but Fnatic, KC, and then Koi, none of them played, and truthfully, I even had to refresh my memory of what the bracket even was in the LEC and call it my bird brain, ADHD, already forgetting that. But I gotta imagine that some of that is the result of having this week off in the playoffs. Everyone forgets what were the storylines, who were the good teams again in the LEC. So most of them stay put for this week, but we do have the climb, the resurgence of 100 Thieves kind of coming in between both Koi and Carmine Corp, and we saw a very solid showing against Red Canids, who looked pretty good against Shopify. I know we can meme the Rebellion as much as we want, that they lost to the CB Lull or the LTA South, ha ha ha. Nice memes. This beat Cloud9. Somehow Cloud9 is catching strays, but credit where credit is due. Red Canids looked good coming into this matchup, and 100 Thieves absolutely easily handled business. Dokla and the team synergy looks on point. Seems like good vibes. Quid had an absolute destructive series, and we've seen Quid dominate domestically, win MVP, and then we saw him have a disappointing Worlds performance. So I'm excited to see him on the international stage, because no question at this level, Quid can compete internationally against some of the very best mid laners on the planet. So I hope he maintains this level, and who knows, maybe 100 Thieves can actually make a little bit of noise at the World Championship. But real quick, back to these EU squads. 100 Thieves absolutely at a comparable level, and the LEC versus LTA as a whole, if you're comparing the top two teams at least, could be comparable. Obviously the third for the LTA North falls off a cliff, whereas squads like KC and Fnatic are comparable. They have that head-to-head. I don't think it's a shocking upset either way. Carmine Corp should be slight favorites, but I don't think anyone's going to be pulling out their hair or completely losing their minds if Fnatic does come away with that quote-unquote upset. This is a squad that we were looking at as the best team in Europe. Now we're probably approaching, well, not even 2 months ago, like a month ago, we were very high on Fnatic and how they started the split, and it just really feels like they have not played very many games, and that, again, is just another opportunity for us to shoehorn in a little burn on how horrible the scheduling has been for the LEC, because we actually haven't had many games out of Fnatic or anybody from the European region at this point. So really a bit of a mystery, a large question mark as to how good EU is actually going to be performance-wise at this year's World Championship. Last squad on this top 10 list, staying put in the 10 zone, is KT Rolster, Invictus Gaming, the last one on this list. Spoilers for what's coming up with KT, but IG, obviously we didn't really see them. They're just in the gauntlet sitting there waiting, and now they have this big matchup against top eSports, who I think, no question, TES after the playoff run, you feel like are better than IG. They both these squads matched up against Billy Gaming to very different results. I think top esports was much more competitive. I think you'd be insane to say otherwise. And then you follow that up with how IG got completely dismantled by AL 3-0, and you're going, ooh, not feeling so great about IG. The only question is, can they return to the form that they had in the last 3 weeks of the regular season? They've had a lot of time to look inwards and think about how to get back to that point. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not for IG to be looking inwards. So another massive question mark on how this team will actually look when they match up against top esports for the incredibly pivotal best of 5 to decide who will be that third seed representing the LPL at this year's World Championship. Then we get into that top 10, and I got a little too hyped. Just wanted to talk about the KT Rolster Coaster, who are here in that 10 zone, and you're thinking, okay, we had this incredible run against Genji. You follow that up with, I'm not going to call it a dud, but you were outmatched in Hanwha Life, and that's not really surprising. I'm sure there were so many resources, prep, mental power and drain that went into that Genji series. It's almost expected to have a letdown in the following series. We'll see how KT bounces back against now a hungry and angry Genji, who probably did not appreciate all the slander that was thrown their way after that KT series, and will be looking for some swift revenge. Can Cuz and BDD keep up that insane level that they had against Genji? And equally as important, can Dokdom hold his own against Ruler in another series? I'm not about to say outperform Ruler, because that would have to be a severe underperformance out of Ruler for that to happen, more so than Down playing out of his mind. I think even Down playing out of his mind, you're still favoring Ruler on a mediocre day. Sorry, Down, but I just hyped up that he could do some Zig, some other stuff, and it worked out in that series. But I don't see it happening again, and even though KT will not be the 4th seed of the LCK, I think they will probably be the weakest team heading into this World Championship, barring some, well, I suppose even if T1 loses as the 4th seed, KT are still going to be the weakest LCK team. So I retract that statement. Anyone's Legend gets popped down a few spots to numero 9. Obviously, they lose to Top Esports in that upper bracket final, or that losers bracket final, and the drop is a little bit more because of the couple teams around them, which we will get to in a minute. But Anyone's Legend, obviously it's always a bit tricky going to Worlds as that 2nd seed because it's often a squad that goes after a loss, right? It's just the points you had for winning Split 2 was enough for AL to qualify as that 2nd seed. So you're left kind of wondering and in a difficult spot to grade a team that came in losing a series. You lost to Top Esports, but you pumped IG, but you weren't quite at the level of BLG. So AL are still a team that absolutely will be favorites to make top 8, and if they find their form again, semifinal, even finals. That is the level that we have seen them at internationally and domestically. So we've also seen this team turn it on with the flick of a light in playoffs to kind of return to that form. So not super worried about AL despite going in 2 Worlds on a 1 series losing streak. But the real reason they got dropped down a few is these 3 squads ahead of them, starting with the Flying Oyster, who yet again complete another undefeated split in Split 3, and did it even more convincingly, at least game score wise. You look at Split 2 where they went undefeated. They needed all game 5s or game 3s to get through the entire playoff bracket. They only needed a game 3 against Team Secret Wales early in the playoff bracket, and then when they rematched in the finals, they improved to a 3-0. Game 3 was close, but a pretty convincing series across the board for Flying Oysters. Honkyu and Doggo are an absolutely elite dual carry threat for the squad. We still have the rotating top lane of Rest and Driver. It's the same old CFO, just kind of fine-tuning things, making sure that their sports car is spick and span for the World Championship, and I'm excited to see this team yet again match up. They were 18-4 overall game score this split, which again, different format, so hard to compare, but 22-7 overall in Split 2. But an actual series, this team has not lost in the last 2 splits. They are the definition of consistency when it comes to the LCP. G2 stays in that 7th spot ahead of them. They're still sitting pretty, waiting in finals for whoever it's going to be of the other 3 remaining teams in the LEC. Obviously, Koi and G2 are already locked in. Fnatic and KC are playing for that final world spot, and G2 going to be a favorite against any of the 3, even if Fnatic comes in and swiftly 3-0s KC and then Koi, or KC 3-0s Fnatic and then Koi. It doesn't matter. G2 are going to be the favorites. Everyone has been leveling up in this playoff push. And again, you really feel the hunger, the drive, the motivation out of this G2 roster, having not gotten a title yet here in 2025, which is a rarity. There was some stat recently that was absolutely insane. It was like 21 out of 25, something like that, possible finals that G2 has existed as an organization. Only 4 times they haven't made the finals, which is an absolutely disgusting statistic. But it is time in and time out that we're talking G2. Even if they have a terrible regular season, slumping regular season, whatever it is, they're there in finals. We've already seen the level up. They could still, flounder in these finals, but still feeling good about them at the World Championship, feeling almost as good about them as FlyQuest in the spot ahead of them, who I know, no Bwipo, it's a Brazilian team, but this is the champions from the LTA South that FlyQuest absolutely demolished on the Rift. And Inspired, of course, had to go and say afterwards that their prep consisted of basically nothing. They didn't even look at any of these games from Vivo Kate Star, which feels a little bit bad. Like, You need to kick them while they're down. But FlyQuest, the body of work for Split 3 has been near immaculate. They only trail BLG in terms of kills per game from all major region squads and have the highest Atacon percentage of any team in the major regions. And other major categories, they're right there with the likes of CFO or Gen G, who, have been the most dominant within their region. So FlyQuest, looking like the best Western team by a nail. You can throw over G2. I think Inspired is easily, clearly the best Western player in the world right now. And spoilers, I've been thinking ahead to some of these player rankings, top 20 at Worlds, and I think Inspired more than deserving to be on that list. But it doesn't matter if it's Gakos or Bwipo. Inspired in the gang said obviously Gakos has a lot to work on as a rookie. I mean, the dude has played 5 games now on stage, so plenty of room for growth. But I'm just curious to see how the time is split between him and Bwipo when we head to the World Championship. It seems like FlyQuest has kind of already checked out for this whatever tournament title is called in North America now, because they've already got a title. They're already looking to Worlds, and truthfully, the second seed isn't as important as it is in World Championships past, because after every round with this new Swiss stage format, it's basically getting reset, and there's a new round of RNG for just drawing who your opponent is. Even if you go 1-0, you're probably matching up against another 1-0 squad, and that's probably going to be a good team, and so on and so forth. So first, second, third seed, not as important as it has been in years past, which makes sense why FlyQuest isn't even watching VODs from their opponent in the upper bracket finals. Now we get into that top 5 action where it is the same 5 teams, and it's hard to argue too much of a change going on here, but we do have T1 bumping up top eSports. Obviously, both of them lost their series over the weekend, and you can talk about the fashion that it was. TES, again, they were competitive. These are a pair of Game 5s, and you're not having huge docked marks for either of these squads. But again, I will say, if somehow TES flounders and ends up facing T1 in that 4th seed play-in matchup, I think T1 would be the favorite against any of the remaining LPL teams. And I know there was an angle where you could see not just T1 winning the series, but potentially a 3-0. Remember, they went up 2-1, and that was with a bit of the biggest throw of the series was that first game that T1, there's a rough faker TP that kind of gets caught out. They get caught between a rock and a hard place, not knowing to either do Baron or contest what Gen G is doing. They contest Gen G and then kind of lose control of that game. But there were angles where T1 could take down Gen G, who obviously are still at the tippity top of our table after bouncing back from that KT Rolster loss. And we'll see. For the first time in months, it feels like, if Hanwha does beat Gen G, they deserve to take that top spot back, because after dismantling T1, and then if they can beat Gen G, what more can you ask in the highest stakes matchup? And then we kind of have that repeat of what we had in 2024, where Hanwha comes in as that top seed from the LCK. Maybe there's a little bit of less pressure on Gen G for this one, but no, there's still very much a lot of pressure on Gen G. But this is the first time in a while that it feels like, number one, a team not named T1 could overtake Gen G, and really anyone could overtake Gen G in that top spot. But we still need Hanwha to actually do that. We still need to see the performances that we've been seeing. They had a good series against KT, but KT does feel like a different animal, despite the big upset against Gen G. You're still valuing that T1 win more than the KT one for Hanwha Life. But again, all 5 members have been playing at a high level in playoffs, way higher than we got in the regular season. And as Mark and I alluded to on the last episode, you got the Last Dance buff for Peanut coming in. You know he's going to lay it all on the line. And it reminds me of when Khan kind of had his last run with Damwon. They made it to finals. Weren't able to come away with it. But it felt like there was extra energy, extra mojo around the entire roster. And then, of course, there was the Deft one with DRX, who ended up playing, 2 extra years after that Last Dance. So we'll see if that ends up being the case for Peanut. But either way, Hanwha Life we have legit 3 LCK teams that can be tournament favorites, and that's why they're 3 out of the top 4. The only non-LCK squad in that top 4 is, of course, Billy Gaming. And despite the finals win, the question mark around the jungle, even though Shadow showed up, and now that's 2 straight series against Kanavi, that seems like he's this dude's kryptonite, which is kind of insane. But it's still not enough for BLG to take that top spot because of the full split body of work that we've gotten out of Gen G, and that's no shade on BLG because, again, you know, previewing or teasing some of these player rankings that we're going to be doing for Worlds, I might be putting Knight ahead of Chovy because Knight has, I had to double check this stat, 6 LPL titles now for Knight, and he has won Finals MVP in all 6 of them. That is that is a Faker level nutty stat that even Faker does not have. But the sheer dominance that Knight has had, and really since the international events in Split 2, where you saw all these teasers and trailers where Knight was talking about he's done finishing second, he's done as the runner-up, he needs some titles, he wants to win. He has been a man on a mission, and he has been terrorizing this entire region. The second best mid in the LPL right now. I mean, there's a lot of names you can throw out. Cream, Shanks, Rookie at times. It's not close. There's such a massive gap between Knight and everybody else in this league right now that it's unbelievable for the LPL being absolutely world-class. So seeing Knight match up against Chovy, against Faker, against Zeka, against BDD is going to be an absolute treat, and it's a field of a lot of Korean mid laners. You know, even when you look at FlyQuest or 100 Thieves, it's still Korean mid laners, so it's going to be an absolute gauntlet for Knight. I can't wait to see it. BLG a deserving at number 1 seed, and hey, how about one more shout out for our boy Shadow, from losing in play-ins to Mad Lions to now here he is on the top seeded team from the LPL going to the World Championship, and he doesn't even have to have any kind of sniff of the play-in stage. He's right through to that Swish stage to probably get a whole lot of criticism if BLG does not perform at the World Championship. But they performed to close out the LPL Split 3, and that is all that matters. But that is all the time today for League Unlock. My name is Eric. Thank you to all you absolutely stunning individuals for hanging out, supporting us as always. You know we will catch you on the Flippity Flip for more Worlds previews, as we're about a week away from all these games wrapping up.